And the episode where they're having her funeral, and he says something like, well, she was overweight, she refused to exercise, and had a poor diet. Okay, Martin.
Yes.
Exactly
yes.
what you should say. All true, but exactly what you should say at her funeral. Okay.
Greetings from a fishing village on the Atlantic coast. You've tuned in to podcast Portwenn, celebrating the world of Doc Martin unofficially. I'm Chesla Wexler, and we'll be discussing Doc Martin, the medicine, the mayhem, and the marvelous people of Portwenn.
Today's episode focuses on Newbie Patty's viewing of Doc Martin's Season 5. Patty, come through and welcome back to podcast Portwenn.
Hi, everyone.
It is
Glad
good to see you. First off, I actually wanted to start with some kudos and comments from our viewers on YouTube. Landry C. commented that she can't wait to hear your impression of Season 5 because it's one of her favorites. Becky is commenting on how much she enjoys coming along for the ride with the two of us as we show things through our eyes. Pauline, she gave us great info on the responsibilities that Clive would have on the oil rigs. So we've got some good information that Clive would be a competent and responsible, intelligent guy. Definitely somebody who Mrs. Tischel would go after. Yeah, so some good stuff there. I've got a couple more later, but why don't we get started with Season 5? Lots going on. New people, lack of old people. What did you think?
It was probably my favorite season so far. I was a little, I know it's the way of TV shows and not real life, but I was a little disappointed in the characters that disappear. Like, oh, we were just getting to know you and like you, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
So, Pauline being gone was, I thought that was a negative because she added some interest to the show. And Auntie Joan, wow, that was a big deal because she, meant something to him and she was kinder to him than his parents were and so forth. So that was quite a shock. And the episode where they're having her funeral and he says something like, well, she was overweight, she refused to exercise and had a poor diet. Okay, Martin.
Yes.
Exactly what you should say. All true, but exactly what you should say at her funeral. Okay.
Do you think that's sort of his coping style, basically? I mean, clearly, like you said, she was important to him. So what is he doing here?
Yeah, I think that's the way he thinks. And it is true. I don't think Martin ever says something that isn't true. And so he, I don't think he's real good at discerning what would be the polite thing to say versus not, even if it's true. And when under stress because this person who was so important to him died, I think that was probably amplified. So yeah, he just rattled off what was comfortable to him, and that would be the doctor thing of, you didn't eat right or exercise right.
Yeah. I kind of think it's just another example of him sort of, I'm not going to talk about anything emotional. I'm just going to talk about pragmatics.
Yeah. Well, that's all he knows. I mean, gradually he's changing. And with Louisa in his life, I think that'll, and a baby, I think that'll creep in more and more. But up to that point, he was able to just shut out anything emotional and only deal with the pragmatic. And going forward, he can't do that if he wants to still have Louisa.
This is true. I'm trying to remember, did Season 5 start with they come home from the hospital and Joe Penhale comes in and says there's been an accident? I mean, do we learn about Auntie Joan? Okay.
Well, they come home from the hospital and half the village is there. And yeah, it wasn't very long before he came running in and said that there's no accident. Oh, I wrote down something. This is just England versus U.S. or the part of the U.S. that I live in. There, I guess maybe it was summer, the half door, there's no screen. So I was just like, birds could fly in, bugs could fly in.
Having just gotten back from England on Saturday night, today is Tuesday, we had the windows open all the time. And it was amazing. I just loved the lack of mosquitoes. I mean, there's no air conditioning. There's no air conditioning and there's no screens. And so you whip open the windows and you hope for the best. And I think we had 2 daddy long legs one night that we caught early. So one died and one got back out based on Christmas being a bit more compassionate than I am when I see something that has all those legs that just get squashed. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. Anyway, yes, no screens.
No screens because I like my air conditioning. I only learned this summer how little of Europe has it. And so I would not want to live there in the summer. But when it's cooler out, I have no problem turning off the air conditioning, opening the windows, but I want my screens. Yeah.
So we see Joe Penhale come in, and he is certainly not wanting to give this news, and you could just tell
Right,
everyone's
and-
heartbroken.
I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure Martin was busy and not wanting, they didn't want him to interrupt or whatever. So it was hard. It was extra hard for him to get the news out, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that Al, I think, had been smart enough to notice that Martin and Louisa had just wanted to be left alone.
Right.
And so he got everybody out of there. But yeah. Did you have any hint that there was no Aunt Joan there? Like, did you notice she wasn't in the crowd or?
No, but I had a spoiler from looking something up in season 2 or 3 or something about. I just wanted to see how old the actress who played Aunt Joan was and whether she was still alive. And I accidentally saw I can't remember her name, leave.
Stephanie Cole. Yep.
Oh.
I know.
I don't think I knew she was going to leave. I didn't know which season.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I have to admit, I noticed that her name was not in the credits when the season opened, and I told Chris, I didn't know what happened, but I was like, there's only really one explanation for why Stephanie Cole would not be in the credits.
Right.
Yeah. But all right, so we've got Pauline left, Auntie Joan's gone, but Aunt Ruth comes in.
Now, I could not remember. Did they mention her? Like when his parents came to visit? Or was this just like a sister that they had to invent at that time because they wanted that kind of character?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that for sure, but
yeah,
I do not believe she was previously mentioned.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But you could tell.
I didn't notice it if she was. Yeah.
And you could kind of see that like Aunt Joan and Aunt Ruth don't seem like they would have a lot of stuff in common, right?
No, but Martin and Aunt Ruth do.
Yes, absolutely.
She was interesting. I mean, she seems more caring than his parents, but she's not Aunt Joan, so.
Yeah. What does she say about herself? She's either awkward or she overshares.
Yeah, she said, I either say nothing. I forget what she said. I either do this or I overshare. And I just thought that was
like now.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
So. And then we see a lot more Joe Penhale in the season, and we get more Wenna.
Yes.
Who's been popping around from job to job, and all of a sudden she just gets hauled in, right?
I found the whole thing with Joe, I found that interesting, seeing I didn't know he had an ex-wife. Again, I don't know if that was alluded to before or not.
It was.
Yeah. And I had more affection for him because it just seems so sad because, she shows up, she thinks they're still together. He would love to still be together, but he knows they're not. And he knows she left him. And he was so torn between, ooh, can I just keep this new person that thinks I'm, okay? Or do I have to tell her the truth and that we, weren't together and so forth. And so I found myself, feeling some empathy for him. And yeah, that was sad and touching,
Yes. Yeah. I think it's alluded to when we first meet Joe in season 3, I guess, where he says he was kicked by a horse and it caused like mood swings and all this other stuff. And
I remember that. Yeah.
And I think, he got divorced because his personality had changed. But don't you kind of have a sense that
it used to be that way? I kind of thought that I had forgotten that part, that maybe he didn't used to be this way. And I just thought that, he's annoying, but he's a decent guy. And that woman needed more excitement. She didn't seem to appreciate him. And so she went with some other guy that we don't see, but it seems like he cheated on, they were supposed to get married and he cheated on her. And Joe would never do that. And but that wasn't enough for her, So clearly it feels sad, and I'm sure he doesn't feel this way, but he's better off without her because she doesn't realize what's good about him. So I don't know if there's any woman out there that will, but yeah. So
I mean, you get a sense what does it's Mags, right? Maggie.
Mags. Yeah.
When he starts doing things that are a bit more assertive and standing up for himself, slightly more just sticking up for people, like not even too much, right? She starts thinking, I could be attracted to this guy. Like that was the thing that might have been missing was that he was just sort of wimpy and had all of these insecurities, like going up a ladder and all this. So.
Yeah. But I didn't like that ladder sequence. That bothered me because, okay, so Martin's already up there trying to get the guy to come down, and she's encouraging him to go up. Why would 3 people on the ladder be good? That made no sense.
Yeah.
And so I didn't like that whole thing.
Yeah.
But anyway.
The only explanation I could see to it was you've got a guy up there who's having a medical problem, and you've got a medical doctor up there who just went up because he has to treat the medicine, but you have sort of a safety person up there who's going to just help with the situation. But
yeah. But by the time, that might have made sense at the beginning, but by the time he started doing that, they were already trying to come down.
Yeah.
And so he was in their way. I mean, it's just... Yeah. I'm annoying like that when I watch a TV show. I'm a realist, and I look, there's a... Actually, that was something in the first episode that I wanted to comment on. I don't know if this is different in England or not, but when they were leaving the hospital to come home, and he was saying you got to put a baby in a car seat. Oh, I was just going to hold him. Okay, so this is like 2011 or somewhere around there. You couldn't do that in the U.S. when I had my kids in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. They would not release the baby if it was not going into a car seat. And so, no, you can't. I mean, I suppose you can drive away, take the baby out of the car seat and then hold him, but you cannot leave the hospital in the United States without putting that baby in a car seat, even in the 80s and 90s. So I wondered how realistic that was, if they would just let them drive off, small town, different kind of hospital, or if England has different rules or what.
Yeah, I don't know if they would actually check that you are putting the child in a car seat, but Joe certainly said if you just held him, then he would have to arrest her, right? Because she was not doing something.
I was with Joe this time. That was my first thing. Like, I'm with you, Joe. Another thing about Joe, why I liked him a little bit more, there was a flash of competency when he was talking to the loan sharks and trying to get them to leave and saying, if you come back here, that car, do you have the correct insurance? Do you have the correct licensing? And I'm going to be after you every single day. I mean, that was interesting to me because I would have thought somebody would have to have fed him those lines for him to say them. But he came up with it on his own. He said it very convincingly. And I was like, oh, wow, we're going to see a little bit more of competent Joe. But then when we got to the last episode and he was climbing on the castle and I was like, okay, same old Joe.
And, if Maggie had seen him stand up to the loan sharks, she would have been attracted to him again. But when she saw him bumbling around at the end.
And that wasn't forced. That was him really doing it. It wasn't like he was saying, hey, Bert, pretend like you're doing this so I can come in and save the day. It wasn't like that. It was something he actually did. And so I was impressed with that. I wouldn't mind seeing more of that in a season to come, but I'm not holding my breath.
Joe seems to have a real compassion too, which to me is like Mark. Mark had a lot of compassion for people. So Joe is going to arrest Mrs. Dingley for breaking the rear window of the car. But then when she cries and says she can't afford to pay for the window, he's kind of like, we will say nothing more about it. So you kind of get the sense that it's just going to be vagrants and it's not going to get blamed on her.
Yeah, he definitely showed some compassion there. And
then, but he's going to arrest Mrs. Tischel for kidnapping a minor, but he lets himself get talked out of it by the physicians saying, no, she's had a psychotic break. So this is not a crime.
Yeah. We got the baby back. It's all good. And she needs treatment and go get it. Yeah.
And, she needs treatment in theory from what we're hearing from the 2 medical professionals because she's been taking these medications. Now, I get that. So Joe can be competent.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we get to see a little bit of competence again because that was nice.
One thing that somebody had noted, I think it might have actually been Pauline. I think she pointed out that there were a number of sort of good health things about Doc Martin because, they recommend the car seat. They're definitely pro-vaccine.
Yeah. The vaccine thing, well, we talked about that when it happened. I was really surprised at that because that was much more current that they had, said, this British guy said that it causes autism, but it doesn't.
Right,
right. Yeah, so but the car seat, that wouldn't have been current at all in the U.S. That had been for years that they would have been pushing that. But
right.
Anyway,
no, that's true.
The other thing that I wonder what is viewed as the healthy way in England, or if it's, some people think this and some people think that, and there's no agreement. Martin didn't want him to use a dummy. And I'm like, what's a dummy? Is that a pacifier?
Yes.
I looked it up and it is. And when I had I think pacifiers the pendulum has swung, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't think that's in the US, I don't think that's as universally that doctors have only one opinion like they do for car seats. But
right.
I'm not sure. My grandkids, I think it was the same as with my kids. They didn't, if they couldn't get them to go to sleep and they knew they weren't hungry and were fed, they tried it and the babies just didn't really take it. So I don't think pacifiers are necessarily a bad thing, but I didn't know in England if they are considered that.
I don't know. We'll have to find out. But
maybe your British people can chime in and say if it's like half feel this way and half feel that way.
Yep.
Or not.
But then you've got this baby who's crying all the time and keeping people awake, and they're getting edgy, and there's very different opinions on do not cuddle that baby, and it's a thin end of the wedge, Louisa.
Yeah, that was interesting. And again, with me, the realist, it's like, okay, how old is this baby supposed to be? And I was, let's see, in the episode, I don't know what it was, 5 or so, at some point when Martin starts saying, well, he should go to this prep school. And she said, he's 8 weeks old. And I was like, okay, he's only 8 weeks old. So there were times when Martin and even Louisa were holding the baby in earlier episodes that they can't hold their head up until after 8 weeks old. You're still holding their head at 8 weeks old. And so, it's because England probably has rules like the US does about how much babies can be on camera, and newborns are never newborns in TV shows and movies and so forth. But still, I felt like they should have been pretending. Like, you can't carry a baby that's a couple weeks old like that. But anyway.
Yeah, I do remember. I just binged the last 3 episodes just to try to be a little current here. Yeah. And I do remember Louisa running around with the baby's head, held.
One time she was, but other times it seemed like they weren't consistent about that. Okay. I didn't think.
Yeah. I know they had 6 babies.
Pardon? It was 6?
They had 6 different babies. 2 sets of twins and then 2 individuals. And because not only do they have limited hours, but I saw an interview with Martin Clunes one time where he's like, this one's broken, we need a new one. Like they need a crying baby right now, right? So
you need one that's crying. Hand me the one that's crying.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to nudge it and make it cry, right?
Yeah, no, right.
Like, we need a sleeping one right now. Okay, this one's sleeping.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, let's not torture the child to get the reaction that we want. Ruth has some pretty fun lines. What did you think of Aunt Ruth?
She says she's a psychiatrist. So I found that interesting because she's so, she should be understanding people and have some of that empathy or compassion or something that Martin seems to lack to be a psychiatrist. So, what kind of psychiatrist is she? And, well, again, I don't know what mental health services are like in England, but in the United States, it's possible that psychiatrists don't do that much therapy because only psychiatrists can dispense medicine. So if the patient needs medicine in addition to therapy, they have to go to a psychiatrist for that. But a lot of people go to people that have a psychology or a licensed clinical social worker background. So, maybe in the US you would find a psychiatrist that I wouldn't want to go to her for therapy. Well, maybe you'd find psychiatrists like that in the U.S. as well, and you just go get your prescription and leave. I don't know, but I would have really liked to have seen a psychiatrist that had more social skills.
This is hinted at. It would have been known to everyone in England, but not here in the United States. She is a psychiatrist at Broadmoor.
She did mention that at one point, yeah. And so she's not dealing with patients that are just trying to, get over their anxiety about flying or whatever.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So I guess that makes more sense. And she probably, hopefully she couldn't get that kind of job. Hopefully. Yeah. But, but she does have, I think she's a little ahead of Martin maybe with some of her observations and cues. She can pick up a few more social cues than he can, but yeah, she definitely comes out with some zingers. But it was interesting that she came there because she thought she was just coming there to die, and she didn't have the disease that she thought was going to kill her. And I guess this Sjogren's disease is something easier to deal with. So that was, quote, a better diagnosis. But some of that kind of made more sense. That some of her behavior, I thought, might have been like because she thought this is it. I don't know.
And she really didn't intend to stay in Portwenn. She was going to go home right away. And then she found out that Joan left her the farm.
Right.
Just that bloody woman.
Interesting to see the relationship develop with Al, being the caretaker for the farm and helping her out and so forth. It was very interesting to see that happen.
Yeah.
And so you could see there was a heart in there somewhere.
Yeah. She sees something in Al because,
I
mean, he basically uses her money to try to pay off the loan shark, was not going to tell her, and she still keeps him.
Right. Well, at first she didn't, because when he came back and said, okay, I've got a plan for paying you back, and he said, I'm going to sell my moped, I'm going to do this, and she said, well, if you sell your moped, how are you going to get to the farm? And he was like, well, I didn't think I had that job anymore. And so and she said, you didn't, but now you do, or something like that.
Yeah.
So
at first you didn't.
And so I don't know that Martin would have had that insight that this is basically a good guy that thought he had no other choice, and he would have paid her back. Yeah, no, he shouldn't have done what he did, but I don't think he was like going to continuously steal from her. I think he was going to be hard pressed. Like, how would he pay her back? But yeah, and the whole loan shark thing put a little bit of different, once she thought about that, I think that, but her initial reaction, I think, would be anybody's reaction. Hey, you took my 800 pounds or whatever it was and, you spent every single cent on something else. You didn't even spend any of it on the fence. It's,
Right. Yeah.
So.
Martin, I think, has a soft spot for Al too, because in an early season we see him fully capable of taking care of his own computer, but then like undoing the fix he did and hiring Al, right, to do tech support.
But they haven't really gone any further. I don't know what's in the seasons to come, but Al is still either helping his dad at the restaurant or fixing things and not, getting any kind of like job out of his computer skills. So I'm curious to see if he ever goes back to that. But there was something, I think Martin has more affection for Al than maybe for Bert, because Bert there was something where he said, I can't remember what episode, but something like, well, I guess this is it, Doc. And then he didn't like shake his hand, or Bert just like left. There's still kind of an issue between those two.
This is probably the season where I start not liking Bert as much.
Really?
Well, just
I thought you thought I was too tough on him before. I said, that's not when we were talking about teasing, and I didn't really think that was. I thought across the line, and so that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he really just here's Al. Like you said, he had these goals to not be a plumber, to maybe do computer repair. He had the knack for it. Then his father gets this restaurant, and he ends up getting sort of roped into helping out with that after he gets back from his little trip that didn't work out very well. So now he's like roped into that because he's had to bail his dad out and
a bunch of times.
A bunch of times. And Bert never really seems to be grateful to him. It's just
no. The episode in prior season where he basically. There were a couple of them where Bert seemed more like tender towards his son, like, is he really his son, that thing? And then does he have these computer skills, and does he want to follow with that instead of being a plumber? And he seemed like he was going to be supportive. And, he bails him out with these loan sharks. And like you said, he didn't seem to be that grateful.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you've got to help me. And you've got to help me get out of this thing that I got myself into. And And Al's like, no, you got to do it. And yet Al still tries, right?
Right. He said no, but then he went and, he just couldn't resist when he saw what, is that common in England? She gave him so much cash in an envelope. Like in the U.S., you would write a check, or, even in that day, you would probably still write a check in that day, or a credit card, but not cash.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly she expected a receipt, right? Because she even asked for it, like she needed it for the VAT.
I need the invoice for it. Yeah.
So it wasn't like an under the table, off the books kind of thing. It was just she paid cash for it. Yeah. So what else were your reactions to it?
Okay, so not that it was perfect, but I would expect absolutely nothing in terms of parenting out of Martin. And I thought he did a little more than might be expected from him. And even when Louisa wanted to, like, it's one thing if she had to do something at the school, because that was her job, but one of the times it was just to go to the restaurant. Now, granted, she asked him, do you want to come with me? And he said, no, which you knew he would say. But I thought he was pretty accepting of, okay, sometimes I have to take care of this baby. Now, like in any marriage, when you have 2 careers and some kids, sometimes your childcare goes awry and you have to argue whose is more important and who's going to, put aside their thing and take care of the baby and who's going to get to go do their thing. But he was, if he had the free time, he didn't act like this is your job to take care of this baby. If he had the free time, he took care of the baby. It was, and I loved when, I think it was when she went to that party and he didn't want to go. And she said, he likes the such and such book. And so he didn't read him that book, but he was reading him the medical journal because that's him and that's what he knows. And so it was nice that you saw her catch him. I think that was the end of the episode. And she smiled, just caught him.
I love the fact that he had obviously been watching her technique in reading, right? Because he shows the baby the picture of the author.
Yeah. And there was another time where I think it's beginning of an episode. He's asleep in the car with a baby, and it's like, oh boy, this is something that most pediatricians would tell you, don't do that, don't get in that trap. But when you just cannot get this kid to go to sleep, and they sleep well in the car, you just do it. And so, I mean, a good thing that he pulled over and fell asleep, but there's probably lots and lots of parents out there that have put the crying baby in the car seat, gone for a ride, gotten the baby to sleep that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you can tell these two they're at wit's end with the crying,
Yeah. Yeah. But he did it, not her. So, and so I felt like, sometimes I felt like Louisa wasn't quite giving him enough credit. I mean, maybe it wasn't where she wanted it to be, but in what they show, in the episodes, it was more like she would yell at him for not doing something. There was no like talking or that they showed sitting down and figuring this out. And you do this, I'll do that. There was, and you could expect him not to initiate that, but you would think she would. I would think she would. And once again, when it gets tough and he's not doing what she would like, and even if she's right, her response is to, okay, I can't take this. I'm going to live with my awful mother. So your awful mother's better than him? I don't know.
Eleanor shows her true stripes, doesn't she, all throughout the episode?
Yeah, yeah. It was interesting when the fisherman wasn't a date. It was an attempt at a business transaction, because that had me fooled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think she was fooling him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Sort of manipulative. She seems kind of manipulative no matter what, right? She wants what she wants.
And anything that she did, she didn't own up to anything. Like, she left. She left when this, and you should get over that, Like, whoa, like that. Yeah.
But also, I mean, she just came in one day to Louisa and said, here, you need to take the baby. I have this business meeting with the shellfish guy.
Yeah.
Right? And then she hired out Angie Grappy. Girl with the ankle
not
bracelet.
only just outsourced it, but to apparently a terrible person that not just Martin thought was terrible, but so did Louisa. So
so did law enforcement.
Yeah.
I mean, she comes to him because she's wearing an ankle tag, right?
Felon teenager. Yeah.
Yes.
She didn't even look to know the ankle tag. Yeah. That was world's worst grandmother. Yeah.
Although I was
actually surprised that she let her watch him for more than like an hour anyway. But
But at first she was successful in getting the baby to settle down, right?
Yeah. Is that with alcohol? But to her credit, maybe she didn't know it was alcohol. I mean, she says she didn't, but I don't really trust her. But is that actress that played her mom, is she at all famous? Have you seen her in other British
I've seen
shows?
her in other things, yes.
Yeah. Because I didn't think she looked anything like Louisa, and it was a little hard to genetically think this is her mother. But I wondered if it was because sometimes they pair up. We want this actress because she's really
right.
So,
well,
I don't know.
If we look at that and we have to compare I forget what season, one of the earlier seasons, we see little child Martin bringing a butterfly to his father, and he enters the office without knocking. And the person who plays Martin's father is Martin Clunes in that. And then later on, we see Christopher Ellingham, and he's, this sort of very different looking person.
Looking guy, yeah.
So not that consistent with that.
Yeah, but, so.
Let me go back to one point on what you said about Martin taking on, decent parenting stuff. He certainly makes pretty major assumption that Louise is just going to stay home with the baby in London.
Yes, that was not good. But again, that could be discussed, not just like, oh, I'm not doing that. You go ahead. I'm staying here. Yeah. And that was a big one. Setting up a date for the christening without checking with her because it was the only day possible. Like, why would I check with you? It was the only date possible. But I think that's when she left because he didn't think to ask her. And I don't think it was that thing. It was like a straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. It was probably more, you think I'm going to give up my career and stay home with the baby. And so, yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah. And also we're going to send the kid to boarding school. Like we didn't even discuss his education and you're already putting him on a list.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually a little surprised at that because, well, maybe not. I take that back. Some kids wouldn't like to be just sent away to boarding school, but his parents were so bad that maybe he viewed it as boarding school was better, but didn't he want to be the kind of parent that the kid wouldn't want to escape from? Certainly Louisa would.
Yeah. I also think that he just has a very poor opinion of Portwenn Primary.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids lick the floor.
Yeah. Yeah.
The floor licker. What else do we have? We hear that Martin what does he talk about? Something that, leave the baby by itself. Like it didn't do Martin any harm to just be left alone to cry himself to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I turned out okay. There was something else where he said something about being stuck at home with baby and you in a good way. This was one of my favorite lines. Joe came in asking questions about memory loss, and he was actually asking for Mags, but he didn't admit that. And when he was getting up to leave to go back to work, he said, "Thanks, Doc. I won't waste your time again." And he said, "I very much doubt that."
Yes. Yes.
That was like vintage Martin.
I do enjoy the writers of this show.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are we ready to go to the last episode? Because that was my favorite.
Not yet. We've got.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah. We've got Buddy.
Well, that actually surprised me. Here we are in season 5, and Martin has not warmed up to that dog. And not that Aunt Ruth seems really like a dog person either. But yeah, I kind of thought that he would warm up by now. I'm
Not
curious
yet.
to see if he ever does. In 10 seasons?
10 seasons. Yep.
10 seasons. Yeah. I'm curious to see if he ever does.
Yeah. Well, there is the whole naming of the baby thing, right? Where
yeah, that was interesting because that was dragging on and on and on. I mean, a lot of people leave the hospital with, no baby name, but I'm trying to remember when they commented that he was 8 weeks old. He didn't have a name yet, did he?
I think he had a name by then. I think he had a name.
It was
yes.
definitely, this kid was definitely several weeks old before he had a name. And that was something that I didn't think Louisa gave enough credit to him for that because they were discussing and they both liked James and Henry. She wanted James Henry and he wanted Henry James. And, she was saying later that, well, we need to settle this because we have to send that paper. And he said, I already sent it in. And then she was starting to get mad and he sent it in with the order she wanted. So that was pretty nice. I mean, okay, he made an assumption, but at least he was going with what she had already said she wanted.
Right.
And so he was noticing something. He noticed and he valued her opinion and he, took it. So.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but like if you're trying to come up with a date for the christening and he checks the calendar, he probably should have said, I looked at your calendar and the 22nd or whatever seems to be okay with you. Is that a good date?
Of course that's what he should have said, but he doesn't see any difference between that and he looked at her calendar, saw that it was open and he made it.
Right.
Yeah. So that's
his calendar.
That's what he still has to learn. Yeah.
That's right. He needs to learn these human dynamic things. So we learned that
and all of us
go ahead.
Make that mistake from time to time. He just makes it all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
So far. He'll learn. He'll get better. He'll never be great, but he'll get better, is my prediction.
I thought he was getting ruder in this season, and I don't know if that was like lack of sleep or just how he felt things were going with Louisa.
I don't know about ruder, but I think that I guess I kind of expected a little more progress by now than I feel like we've had. So he hasn't. Anything that he's better at is only with her. Like I have not seen improvement with other people.
Yeah, no, like
he totally wastes. If they come in with something that he doesn't think is much of a medical complaint, next patient, he totally dismisses them. And that doesn't seem to have changed. And of course, it goes the other way too, where he just sees somebody and I think you have such and such, like out of nowhere. But he's always right. He's never been like interrupting somebody and they didn't have anything wrong.
That's true. I mean, in early seasons, he is wrong with diagnoses several times, right? Because
diagnoses, but not that there was nothing wrong. He's never gone up to somebody that has nothing wrong and said, you need to, go get that checked out. They do. So,
no, that's true.
He's that good of a doctor that if he thinks something's wrong, something is. It may not be the first thing he thinks it is, but it is something.
Yeah, no, that is true. What else?
There's Florence, the dingle, the
Mrs. Dingley?
Cat. Yeah.
Yeah, I learned a new term on that one with comes a cropper. When she falls down in Bert's restaurant, he comes out, it's Mrs. Dingley, she comes a cropper. Like, what does that mean? Yeah. I thought it was interesting where we hear Ruth tell Louisa that people don't change. And she says
I was like, whoa, what are you saying here? Like, don't marry him because he's always going to be like this. Don't change. I would have thought, I was like, she's a psychiatrist. Shouldn't she be saying something different from that? I don't know.
Was she in psychiatrist mode or was she in aunt mode and just knowing Martin?
I don't know.
Because Louisa's like, they can if they want to.
Yes. I like that attitude.
Yeah. And there's always this discussion around, is Martin on the spectrum, right? Does Martin have some level of autism or Asperger's or something like that? And she says people don't change, and maybe she's just talking about Martin. You might think that she's seeing something that just is inherent in him. Or she could just be seeing that he's a product of his horrible upbringing and also...
Right. I'm not a medical professional, so I would not be qualified to judge anyway. But I would say that I'm not sure because we've seen so much of his upbringing that he was just never taught any compassion or empathy so he might be or he might not be. But it feels like he is. Like some of the effect on the people around him might be the same. And the question is whether he, and even people with autism have different abilities, and it's a spectrum. It's not, if you have autism, you're this way. And they can be, at least some of them can be taught skills or questions to ask. Like, I think this, but maybe these people around me don't, I should ask, or something like that. And so you feel like Martin is at least in that category if he is on the spectrum. I don't know.
I think I'm with kind of where I think you were heading there. I personally just think he's a product of his upbringing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure. And initially, when I started watching the show, I thought spectrum. And now that I see all this background, I'm thinking maybe not.
Yeah, because I think his background, what you hear about his upbringing and stuff, it explains everything to me. It just, I don't find anything, and I'm now speaking like through the whole thing. I don't find anything that would make me feel like there's nothing that's unexplained about him.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and there was a TV show on in the U.S. I don't know if it was shown in England, where the doctor from day one, he does have autism. It's a British guy.
Is it like The Good Doctor or something like that?
The Good Doctor. Yeah, The Good Doctor. And he clearly was, and I have no idea. He ended up marrying a quote neurotypical woman and being happy and so forth. But they would have arguments, and he would do things and she'd say, but Sean, that's rude. And sometimes she couldn't just use it as a teaching experience because he would say something and she'd be hurt and she'd have to deal with her hurt before she could try and say, okay, here's why it was rude. Don't say that in this situation or whatever. But they made it clear from day one that he was supposed to be on the spectrum, and of course a brilliant doctor. So I never knew how realistic that portrayal was. Actually, the more I think about The Good Doctor, the more it makes me think Martin is maybe not.
Okay.
And it is it is his upbringing.
Yeah. I've not watched The Good Doctor, but I've known people who had like Asperger's diagnoses and autism diagnoses and stuff. And I don't see the parallels, but like, I'm not their parents. Either am I a medical professional or someone who has lived with someone with autism or been autistic, right? So hard to say. All right. We can jump to where you want to jump to.
No, the last episode I just thought was, well, part of it. I thought the ending, was very well written, and I really liked it. The Mrs. Tishel thing, I was a little bit confused about because, okay, we find that she's taking these 2 medications and that they shouldn't be taken together, and that, was all of her behavior from that? Has she been doing this the whole 5 seasons? Because she's always had kind of a crush on him and was probably disappointed when it was unrequited. And, he was getting deeper and deeper with Louisa. But that all seemed kind of like normal crush, like, well, I lost kind of thing. And boy, if Louisa ever leaves him, I'd be interested kind of thing. But not, oh, I think I am his wife. Oh, I think this is my baby. And so I was a little confused as to whether that medication was supposed to be like just now or all along. And I'm curious to see if she's in season, what are we on, 5, 6? If she's back, and if she, like, just where she is with her husband and Martin, and how all that plays out. I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. We don't see her popping pills until this season, right?
No. Right.
Yeah. But like you said, she's always had this attraction to him. I think one of the earlier seasons, doesn't she say something like, I could eat him with a spoon?
And which seems so funny because he's just so weird. It's just like, wow, how did he get somebody? Even Louisa doesn't say that. Louisa sees something in him that other people don't see, but I don't know. It was just that the whole way she was about him, I thought it was the comic relief,
Yeah.
And didn't necessarily think it was that she was totally crazy. In fact, she seemed like a competent chemist at different times in different episodes. So I'm interested to see where that goes.
Interestingly, we kind of see that both Louisa and Sally Tishel really seem drawn to Martin's competence.
Yes. And in some ways, Sally is also in a medical field, so you could see that maybe even more of a connection. But Louisa often, when she ends up in a situation with Martin where she has to be his helper or she has to go get help, or even if she's just watching him go into that kind of mode. And sometimes he goes into that mode with, like, that person could have just insulted him or just done something wrong. And Martin is able to just block all that out and be a doctor and do what's required right now. And I would think that might be hard for some doctors because, to do life-saving surgery on a criminal or whatever. And that is what you're supposed to do. And Martin could do that. Martin's exactly the doctor you want in that kind of situation. And so I think Louisa sees not just his competence, but that he does the right thing. He does, and she talked in prior when she was going to get married, and she had her bridesmaid who had never met Martin, and he still hadn't met Martin at that point, and said what she saw in him. Well, he's so honest, and he is. Yeah, he is brutally honest.
Yeah,
and so she appreciates that about him, even though sometimes it drives her nuts because he says things out loud that maybe don't need to be said or don't need to be said that way.
So Clive comes back and he declares that he is going to retire and wants Sally to too.
Right. So that was before she got, I'm going to use the word nutty with the baby and left. And so I was thinking, okay, is this push coming to shove here? Is she going to say, go away, I love somebody else? Or what, just what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that wasn't really answered.
No. Although, I like how Clive is when they're looking at the note from Sally and Clive's like, Doc, you'd better explain what's going on here. Like he thinks maybe something's been happening, right?
What are you doing? Yeah, because and Doc Martin's like, I don't know what this crazy lady's doing. I have no idea what this is. Yeah.
So we get Ruth, Penhale, Louisa, and Martin
all
trying to now find Mrs. Tishel with the baby.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting. And again, Joe was kind of the comic relief of stealthily climbing on and really doing nothing useful. And it was interesting, the dialogue between both Ruth and Louisa were trying to tell Martin what to say to, her, to get her to bring the baby down so they could get the baby back. And I was on Louisa's side. I was like, it was as if Ruth was saying, don't humor her delusions. We've got to get her out of these delusions. So don't say. And Louisa was like, no, say that. Make her feel comfortable. Make her feel like you want her, so she'll come down, and then we can get the baby. And I was with Louisa the whole way.
Yeah. I actually thought Ruth's heart was in the same place of, we want to get the child out safely. And so how do you treat a patient who's having a psychotic breakdown? You try to treat them properly so that you can get them to kind of like snap out of it, in essence, and see what they're doing. And that's going to be good for the safety of the baby. And Louisa's just like, get her to come down. I don't care how you do it.
Get her to come down any which way you can, and then we'll do what you want to do. Then you can do whatever you want, Aunt Ruth. Yeah. Yeah. But I just loved how the authors wrote this dialogue for Martin, and he's looking up at Sally Tischel, but you know that he's really saying it to Louisa. And I just thought that was so cool and so well done.
Yes.
And and not predictable by me, Yeah.
I love the head and eye position stuff there, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got him looking up and then talking to Louisa.
Yeah.
And looking up and talking to Louisa. And, but I do love tell her you're a difficult person.
Yeah.
I'm a difficult person.
Yeah.
And I took so long to tell you that I loved you because I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. And he came up with that on his own. And
well,
that
just
was good.
her look is like,
yeah,
you're an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
I thought that was just so well done.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite lines in the whole episode, and potentially in the whole show, is when Mrs. Tischel sums up the entire 5 seasons of the show in one run-on sentence. Right? Do you remember that? Like, first you're here, then you're gone, then you're going to get married, and then you don't, then you're going to London, and then you're...
And then you're... Right. And then you're... And so what am I supposed to do? How am I... Yeah.
It was a great summary.
That was another, great writing. I thought that was good.
And another thing of great acting, I really just was amazed. When Ruth is talking to Martin about having lupus, this is like throwing back real quick.
Early in the season.
She's crying without crying. And you're like, she's crying. And he notices she's not producing tears. We don't notice it until he points it out because she is so obviously crying.
Right. But the Sjogren's disease, you don't have,
And from just the standpoint of like trying to, stepping out of the fact that as far as I'm concerned, these are real people and it's a documentary, just the acting of being able to like, anytime an actor does something like, they cry, you figure they're pulling on some emotion. Right. And that they can use in order to affect something. But but you're preventing what would happen.
Yeah.
So you're just pulling it off with pure facial technique and the way you speak. And it's just Dame Eileen, well done.
Yeah. Yeah. She did do a good job. Well, even when I didn't like what she was saying at the end, it's still good acting,
Yeah.
I wanted to go with what Louisa was doing. And Martin chose Louisa's technique.
Yeah, and it worked.
Yeah. I thought it would. I mean, yeah.
And I forget what Ruth is telling Martin, you're the handsome prince or whatever, and Ruth is like, and you're the married pharmacist who has been taking an overdose of prescription drugs and is having a psychotic episode.
That sounded like something Martin would say if he was not involved in it directly,
Well, but he did say that. Like what's one of the first things he tells her from the window is you've taken a prescription drugs and you're having a psychotic episode.
Right.
She has some earlier lines, I think when she meets Bert, where she says something like, I'm always on the lookout for a psychological disorder or something like that, like implying that, Bert's got some level of psychological, she's probably codependent on Al, I don't know. But so, at the end of this, we've got Mrs. Tischel being hauled off, Martin declaring his love for Louisa, and that nothing matters, right?
But I said I love you twice in the talk that was in theory to Mrs. Tischel, and then when she said say it again, he's like, I already said it twice. Why do I have to say it the third time?
That's right. And it's that stupid penhale, because you can tell he's just about to say, "I will always love you."
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, "I will always," and then Joe's in, "I'm fine. Lost my radio."
Right. Nobody cares. No.
Exactly. And that drone shot when they're backing off at the very end, you see just the two of them walking and they just get further and further. Oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chris and I went for a hike over by that building.
Oh, cool.
It's owned by the National Trust. It's called Doyden Castle. And you have to like park in a little National Trust lot, and you walk up the twisty, narrow roads, and you climb over like a stile through a field.
Now, was that castle supposed to be only 2 people would stay there in the whole castle?
It's a 1-bedroom. I forget what they called it. It's like a...
Okay. So when the honeymoon couple were staying there, they were the only ones there. I didn't realize that. I don't know if I was supposed to have, if they gave enough clues that that's what it was. So when they got there and they were I was like, don't they have to know what room she's staying in? Or and so it was like, okay, I guess they don't.
Yeah, no, it's a 1-bedroom place that was built in like the 1800s or something for a person to have parties at.
Yeah.
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 But, and also you've got this whole idea of it, the Castle Hotel, the first place that they go to is actually an existing hotel called the Camelot Castle Hotel.
Right.
And it very much looks like a castle. And we stayed there one night.
That would be more like what I was expecting. Like you have to find out what room she's staying in. Yeah.
When we stayed there in our Port Isaac trip, I didn't try to do this or anything, but we ended up in room 119 and she was in 117. So we were, or the Ms. Smith or whatever was in room 117. So we were very, very close to where that was. I recognized the hallways as they went through. I was like, we would have gone left and they went right. It's funny to have been there living in the set. So what do you think happens next?
I would think this time I don't think it's going to be peachy keen, but I would think they would either get married or stay together, living together and, stay in Portwenn. And like I said, I'm eager to see what happens with the pharmacist or chemist. And yeah, I don't know beyond that.
The two of them have such difficulties cohabitating.
Yeah.
And maybe they needed just this threat to their child, right? To kind of clarify things.
Yeah.
Gonna keep watching?
Oh, yes, definitely.
I tried to, obviously I couldn't rush back from England, but I was like, I'm definitely going to have to contact Patty immediately because I'm sure she wants to move on. No, but that's good. That's awesome. Did you see any best medicine parallels or commonalities or any best medicine comments that you'd think were important to make?
I'm finding I don't remember a lot of the plots of best medicine, but what I did 2 things to compare that I think are different. I felt like Martin Best was warming up to the dog even in season 1, by the end of season 1, and I don't see that here. And I also feel like, I don't know that he's that far along with Louisa, but I feel like he's picking up on social cues sooner than Martin is. Like, I feel like Martin only is adjusting his behavior or trying to learn only because he loves Louisa, and not, I think he still treats everybody else kind of the same way. The rest of the Portwenn has not benefited from an improved Martin. And I feel like in the best medicine, he's changed a little bit more even at the end of season 1. I don't know. Interesting to see where that one goes. And I don't know if that's because, hey, it's 2026 and not 2011, and so it's a little different, if they think that American audiences want something different, or they just didn't want to be a complete carbon copy. I don't know, what of any of those.
Well, since, you've watched all of that exists of best medicine, and you've watched half, really, of Doc Martin at this point, we know that Doc Martin has an American audience. There are certainly a group of people who, maybe it's the group of people who like British TV shows, or there's people who have never heard of it, right? So maybe they would like it if they tried it, right? But I believe what I've read about best medicine is the impression is the large U.S. audience would not put up with Doc Martin. Like, he's just too harsh and too mean and too rude. So
the best medicine, Martin Best, is a little more watered down, so to speak.
I'm wondering what your opinion is. That's what I have read as.
Maybe. I think like I'd have to see more episodes, but I felt like he was a little bit more aware, or it I almost feel like Martin Best is aware and he just doesn't feel like doing it. And so maybe he got himself to be a little bit more polite occasionally, more often than Martin Ellingham.
Yeah.
I want to say Ellingham, but Ellingham.
Ellingham. Yes, definitely Ellingham, or you'll get counseled by the commenters on YouTube. It's Ellingham.
Ellingham. Yes, Martin Ellingham.
Yes.
So I feel like I definitely see a difference, and I want to see what they do in season 2. I'm curious. I would say I probably like Doc Martin better than Best Medicine, but I'm curious enough to go back and watch Best Medicine to see what they do. And, with all these characters leaving, are they going to go with whatever the actor, like keep is it Sarah? What is she? Medicine? Yeah. Are they going to keep her as long as that actress is willing to do the part? Or are they going to, kill her off in a car accident as well?
Right.
I think from what I read, it was before Pauline, Elaine. Yeah. The character in Best Medicine, Elaine, that character is coming back for season 2, but whether she stays the whole time and we already talked about a little bit about how she seems to be a little bit of a blend of Elaine and Pauline, because she seems more competent than Elaine and Doc Martin did.
Right.
So I'm curious to see what else they do with
Best
those
Medicine.
characters.
When I think about Elaine in Best Medicine, I think of her as sort of immature and self-centered, but you find out that she's got a warmth and a kindness to her, and she's able to learn how to do, the blood work, those sorts of things, and is generally fond of and helpful to Martin Best. Yeah. In Doc Martin, you've got the first Elaine, who brings to us the narcissistic sort of selfish thing. Yeah. But she doesn't have any of the other dimensions that Best Medicine Elaine has. Then you get Pauline, who is less narcissistic and self-centered and can learn the medical stuff. Right. And now we have Morwenna, who we've had for a season.
She's not narcissistic, but she's kind of in between. She's not super competent, but she's not totally incompetent. She was not the best. Like Pauline would have been better assisting him than Morwenna. Morwenna did better than she thought she was going to do, but... You don't see Morwenna going to phlebotomy school, I don't think, but
although she has a problem with needles, right? So that probably is not going to happen.
Maybe not with blood, but with needles. Yeah.
But she does. She's willing to. She tells Martin, "Did you want me to close up? I could probably do it if you talk."
I probably did. I thought that was funny. Yeah.
She's got a lot of confidence, so we'll see what happens with that. What else? Did I read anything else about Best Medicine? It's coming out on September 22nd. Yeah. I'll be doing an episode with the new Best Medicine Unspoiled panel towards the end of August to get ourselves ready for the season. And I'm going to do a Buckham Fair short to fill people in on what that was all about and thank folks for show some pictures, those kinds of things. Folks, if you are enjoying the podcast Portwenn, I hope you will subscribe to it and like the episodes, tell your friends about it, continue to comment. As I said, we've got some, Gabs 2010 reinforced that we're all in agreement that there is a lot more to learn about the accident, which we talked about last time, and that'll likely give us more info on the phobia. So, so continue to comment. I'm always going to get back to you, especially when I'm not traveling to England and jet lagged and all that. And Patty, as always, I appreciate the time you spend on this stuff and sharing your inputs.
It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks for joining Podcast Portwenn. Podcast Portwenn is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine.